Yo, what's up, everybody? My name's Yoshino, and welcome back to another week of the Anime Battle Royale. If you're wondering what this is, you're a little late on it. Jump back to episode 1. It's somewhere. I'll figure it out eventually. But regardless, if you're wanting to stay for this, what this is where I bring in the 13 most anticipated anime series going into this winter 2020 anime season, and then I review them episode by episode and decide which shows are not worth watching and which shows continue on. Each week, I kill off one show. We'll see where we got so far. Just a little bit of housekeeping before I go too much further. I'm not in the best position right now. I had a lot of things go on recently, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue on this series. I'm going to try my best. If not being able to do it on YouTube, I will let you guys know, and you can follow me on Twitch. And I'll probably just move it to doing it there. I might even start doing more anime reviews there as well. We'll just have to see how that goes. But for right now, I'm going to continue on as best I can to get this series going to the end. I want to do it for a whole year, but I might not be able to make it this whole year, so we're just going to accept the fact that I'm trying to. But with that out of the way, let's start with our first show this week, which will end up being, as always, It Invaded. And I gotta say, I have a headache right now. I think I'm coming down with something. So ignore that parts of it, but this one was a little bit on the tougher side for me. And it's for things that people have brought up before about talking about this show, the few complaints that I've seen so far for this series. And that is, a lot of the ways they come to the conclusions are really, really contrived and only work for the series. Like, there's no way they could have come to these conclusions. And I agree with that in this regard for this episode for basically two things. The first thing I had a bit of an issue with was the way that they came up with the number pattern for the guy's psyche. I could have told you from the beginning, oh, it's a random number sequence, it's pi. 99 out of 100 in storytelling, if it's a random number sequence, it's pi. They did the research and got, numbers and everything that are legitimate, and if you count backwards by that number, it leads up to the time supposedly of his daughter's death. That I didn't see coming, and that's a good thing. That's a good storytelling moment. But them not being able to figure out, oh, what's the pattern? Very first thought, every single time when you see a random number pattern, should be pi. Just throwing that out there. The second thing I had a problem with is probably going to be explained in this next up-and-coming episode, and that is, why were they investigating this guy's house? The director dude, or lead investigator, whatever he is arrested at the end, or I guess like halfway, 3/4 of the way. I can't remember off the top of my head. I got a headache. But he's arrested because they are investigating him. In the previous episode, they did bring up the fact that that they should be investigating people who have connections to the guy who created the machine. I can't remember the name for it. It's something very complex in Japanese. But the machine that they use to dive into people's psyche. That way they can find the serial killer hunter, whatever he is, John Walker. And the fact that they find the John Walker outfit like perfectly fine in his room or in his house, and the dead body and all this kind of stuff, I don't even know why they were digging. Like, there's a lot of things they didn't explain, and they're just like, accept that this is a thing. I'm having a hard time accepting that. I'm still really, really enjoying the show because they'd had a lot of other great things going on with it. One of the things I really, really liked about this episode and what they did is they took that little girl character, put her in his psyche, and was having her last longer, proving that she is, one, capable of being a serial killer, and two, capable of being a really, really great detective because of that. And the fact that they dressed her up as freaking Sherlock Holmes, a little bit too nail on the head. I'm starting to get a little bit tired of that cliche, but writer's shorthand, for a reason, makes sense. She's a really, really good detective. And her coldness and aloofness in getting things done, and yet still, by chance, apparently working with his wife and daughter, I think those are really, really good character writing. The guy who created the series, he does a really, really good job of character development through dialogue. Now, it's very subtle dialogue, but I like it. So I gotta say, this series is continuing to do a very good job in the minor and the macro things that it does. The world as a whole is really, really cool and really, really interesting. The details that connect everything in the entire world together is really, really interesting. But the problems I keep seeming to have with this series is that the things that connect the storylines, the action that knocks over the next domino, seems to be a little bit too contrived for this series, and it doesn't really come across as natural and diegetic for the series. It seems a little bit forced. Now, they do bring up the stuff, like I said in the previous episode, but it doesn't seem to really mesh well. And that's my one problem with this show. When I'm nitpicking it that much because I'm looking deep into the story, you have a good show. In summation, this show is just really, really good. I recommend everybody watch it. Even if you're not into crime thrillers, I'm into crime thrillers. And this is a thriller. This is a thriller. I'll explain that probably more next time, or on Twitter, or on Twitch, whatever. But just know this is a crime thriller, not a crime mystery anymore. Started out as a crime mystery, became a crime thriller. But it's very good, very, very well thought out. I am enjoying it. It's in first place. Don't even have to tell you that later. Probably going to do it anyways. Let's just move on now. Moving on, we have Hanako-kun. I'm going to say I like the character of the librarian. I think he's supposed to be the nurse of the school, homeroom teacher, whatever he is supposed to be. I think he's a really interesting concept where he is... I'm not 100% positive, but I'm kind of guessing he is a spirit before the school existed. He became a teacher in there to kind of keep himself alive because it's rumors that keep him alive. I'm not 100% positive on this. I think he is a spirit that is older than the school, who is working with the school to keep himself alive. But I find him really interesting as a character, and I love how he interacts with Hanako-kun. And the fact that we find out what his name is, whatever the hell his name is, but that he was a student at that school, and that for one reason or another, he became the guiding force for the school's mystic creatures and everything, and that there's a bigger plot going on behind him. That's for some reason he is the most powerful of the seven wonders of the school. It's very interesting. But beyond that, a lot of the other characters kind of felt flatter this episode. Not as deep or interesting. They seemed a little second fiddle in this episode. Even though I know they weren't the focus, but they are the main characters. They're supposed to be the protagonists type characters. They are supposed to protagonate. A protag must protag. Other than finding out the information, which they really didn't, it was just kind of spilled out to us in another sequence. They're kind of just being a way of getting the story moving without actually being... They're being main characters. They're not being protagonists. And I don't like that because they started out as really, really strong protagonists. The only thing that's keeping this show up in high regards to me is the amount of atmosphere and just that animation flair that this studio is known for. They do a really, really good job of getting the original art style and then making it lively and animated. It's not super well animated, but it looks good on a motion screen. Beyond that, it really isn't anything all that special. It started out really, really good, really, really strong, and I'm liking all the new characters that they bring in and how they interact with one another. But for a show that is a, yokai drama, the characters are only the new ones are being interesting. The old ones are starting to become more and more bland. And again, when I'm talking about a show like this, it means that it's good. I think this show is worth watching. I don't want to have to drop it. I don't think any show this week I wanted to drop. There's some shows that I think are a little bit less good than others, but there isn't a show that I just want to go, no, I need to stop watching this. But for right now, this show is entirely worth watching. I'm enjoying it. It's very great. It's very, very stylistic, and I like that in animation. I just want to see more animated scenes like that are actually, 30 frames a second animation of different animation each time instead of just a bunch of still shots. But at least the acting is good for the characters. The writing, for the most part, is really, really good. And just the atmosphere that this show brings across is lovely and endearing. I love it. But I really have nothing else more to say about it, good or bad, this week, so I guess we're just moving on. I'm going to say this before I say my normal thing, in that the fight animation is still killing it. But the shots where they're just kind of walking around seem so stiff, and I kind of hate that. But let's move on. What the fuck is this show? Honestly, I can't say that this episode, because this is the first episode where everything, minus a few small things, felt really, really connected for once. The fact that the one character, this guy, is actually part human from the whole, whatever the word actually is, and being part of the sorcerers, how he looks at himself, how he doesn't identify well his aggressive nature for being hunted down, how he changed the whole, how it operates, and just everything about him felt really, really organic for this series. And that's something really hard to pull off with a series as chaotic as this series is. We definitely feel like each new thing we find out is not only building on that world and making it bigger and more interesting, but it's also making it more nice and neat to understand all the information. The fact that all of these characters are connected in one way or another, and that no one's really telling the truth except for Kaimon, besides him, it seems like no one's stories fully understand. Or understood would be the proper grammatical way of saying it, but whatever. It's really interesting to see this side of these characters. This was one of the very few very heartfelt episodes, and I find that really interesting. And then all the madness happens with Nikaido fucking shit up in the guy's castle, fortress, whatever the hell it is. This series continues to be a very interesting, very well-written story, while seemingly just so raw and chaotic. I don't completely understand how a writer is able to come up with stories like this. I wish I could write a story as incredibly deep and insane as this show is. I have to give it props for that. It's doing an amazing job. I got nothing else to say about it other than I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying pretty much every show so far. So, let's move on. What's next? I don't want to have to say this. I really, really don't. But Pet is being not good. Every time they do one really big psychological battle, it is still really cool and really, really interesting. The way they're going about it and getting to those points, I'm not enjoying. it is coming across really, really rough, really, really tight. And when I say that, I mean like borderline on the edge of just being stupid. It's interesting what they're doing, but it makes kind of no sense, and not in a way like, oh, this is smarter than me, I don't get it, but like they're trying to be smarter, but they don't know what they're talking about half the time. And the way these characters talk, it feels like they're just talking. They're not saying anything of importance. They are just talking. They are dribbling off whatever needs to be said instead of letting it be one, organic, and two, like, I wouldn't want to say like diegetic because that's basically inorganic, but how it is, you know, the show is not doing the show don't tell anymore. It's doing both at the same time, which is just as bad as just doing the tell. It means you do know what you need to do, you just don't know how to pull it off, or you don't respect your audience. This could be something to do with the production cycle. This could also be something to do with the manga. I've never read the manga. I've actually just realized that I have in my manga collection behind me that I do have a couple of volumes that are advertising for Pet. Didn't notice that before, but got it now. But this show is just falling off. The getting the Chinese guy to kill his grandfather, that's very interesting. It's moving that kind of a plot forward, but I feel like there's two or three plots going at the same time that are supposed to be connected, and they don't feel like they are necessary to be followed in the way they need to be followed, or in the way they are being followed. It seems very strange because, or at least to me, in the last episode, I think the guy's name is Tsukasa. Not this guy, but the dark-haired guy. He finally was able to snap out of it and become, fully reconscious again. But then at the start of the next episode, he's only about half conscious. I don't fully understand what's going on. I just feel like it's not explaining anything through dialogue or through visual context clues. It knows what it wants to do. It's just not doing it well. And that's about all I have to say on it, is that it's a valiant effort, but an F is still an F. I'm sorry, Pet. You were doing great. We just need to move on for right now. Rikka Koi continues to be cute. It continues to be well written in its insanity, but believability of its stupid characters who are geniuses. Animation still continues to be meh. But building on these characters is always nice, and I feel like this episode did that. It kind of built on who these characters are more. We know bits and pieces of the main guy and the main girl's backstories, and the other characters in the lab. We know bits and pieces, but this episode seems to bring out more of their background. While keeping them caricatures, it is building on why they are basically caricatures. They are interesting, and they are, though fairly two-dimensional in what kind of characters they are. They are not deep or complex of characters by any means. But there is more to them than just their singular one-notedness. There is multiple notes, but they are very small, very slim. They are still 2D characters. But they're interesting enough. That's the point I'm trying to get at. The show is funny, well-timed, and the characters are starting to become more and more interesting. That's the best thing I can say about this episode. But this show continues to be good and funny. What it's trying to do, it is doing in spades. It's not the best animated, but it continues to be what it wants to be, and I give it all the credit for that. We need more shows like that has a conceit, and it sticks inside of there without either trying to go outside of that box or not filling that box completely. This show is doing a really, really good job. Again, if you want an example of what this show is like, science version of Kaguya-sama from a couple of seasons ago. If you like that, watch this. Moving on. Normally my rule is that I watch it and then I do the review, but because I'm not feeling good, I kind of rushed through watching them over the last couple episodes, so they're not watched in... They're watched in order, but they're not watched and then reviewed. But it's only been like an hour or two, and I don't really remember what happened in this week's episode of Somali. I mean, I do know what happens because, one, I've read the manga, so I know what is happening at this moment. But in the end, I still don't know what happened this episode. I mean, I know what happens in the story and the world building that it kind of gives for this story, but I really don't know, and I think it's supposed to be left ambiguous. I'm doing my best not to give spoilers, but seriously, if you're watching this far into my episode and you haven't watched these shows up to this point, what are you doing here? Go back to the first episode again. Come on. Come on. But I feel as though it's ambiguous the way they ended off the story of the bird girl, the harpy, and the bird mask guy. It's supposed to be ambiguous in the same way that we won't know the ending until we get to the ending of what's going to happen with Golem and Somali. I like that aspect of this show, that it leaves these characters' lives to be able to go off and find a conclusion elsewhere. But for right now, I felt like this was a weak episode. It was great in its action and its characters, and the emotions were pretty raw. But for a scene that should have made me cry like it did in the manga, and I don't mean like flowing tears. I get watery-eyed fairly easily. I don't cry that easily, but I do get watery-eyed fairly easily. Manga made me watery-eyed. It may be because I knew it was coming, but other series have done it before where I knew it was coming and I still get sad. I still get sad every single time I see Simba trying to wake up Mufasa. Don't even get me started on that, and don't at me on that. Or do, whatever. I need followers and stuff. This show just didn't get the emotion across this time, and that's concerning to me. Because I love this show. This show is really, really good. But I felt this episode was weak. This episode did not hit the notes that I felt it could have hit. And I don't know what is wrong or missing with it or what they didn't do right. I'm not the type of guy who could tell you what this show is missing because I'm not that good at storytelling in a visual medium like this. Like, I know what I think I could have done, but I don't know if it would have been as effective. So I'm not going to go out and say they did a bad job. I just don't think they didn't do as good of a job as maybe someone else could have done. I don't know. But this being that one episode that is a little bit off to me, I still say this show is definitely worth watching still. And with that, I know that we have just one episode left to talk about this week, and that is... Honestly, I don't know why, but this was the only screenshot I can get to work. Inspector seems to be following along that same mindset path of Hanako-kun, where these characters get their strengths and their abilities and their likeliness from rumors. That is a very modern attempt at making these mythical creatures be alive in the present, and why we haven't seen them, because they just thrive off of the rumors. They don't have to do anything much, but they have to act within their personality of it. So that's why the one chick is attacking people, and they're trying to beat that with using another rumor to make her either non-existent or at least not as violent as people are making it out to be before she actually kills. But the fact that they sat around and talked about it for, I want to say, 3/4 of the episode is bad. This is an anime. I don't know if they're aware of that, but they are making an anime. And for some reason, they're doing the sitting around at a table, having a conversation to move the plot forward for an entire episode. I don't know how you can get away with doing that and calling it an anime. Unless, like, you know, it is a story that is built off of that, but that's not this story. This story is built off the fact that they fight and work with yokai and mythical creatures and ghosts and other stuff. I don't know what she's doing. I just know she's an intermediary. I think that's the word I'm looking for. She is the go-between between humans and the yokai. Whatever. This show is doing a bad job of doing that because it's just her talking to a bunch of humans. It's not like I'm having a problem suspending my disbelief for this show. This show is very believable in a character, concept, construct, whatever. It works. It works just fine. But for a show that its conceit is working with yokai, it's just talking at this point. And I think that could be a really interesting show concept where the characters are talking about really, really interesting things for the entire time. It's not that interesting, and that's the problem. This show is not that interesting. But this is the first episode where I'm starting to feel that, where I'm starting to feel the fatigue of, is this show worth continuing on if they're just going to talk? The ending, on the other hand, is making my decision on that a little strayed from that. But if the next episode does not kick off strong and hard, I might kick this show off strong and hard. Again, my thought process is a show can have one bad episode, especially in the middle. That's where the dip is for most shows. But if it's dipping multiple times in a row, it's gonna get kicked off. I got nothing else good to say about it when it's doing that. So let's move on to our finals. That was the last show we had to talk about, so we're down to talking about what was the best 3 shows this week and what were the weakest shows this week and which shows get in the... I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. Making a top list is hard when you have so few shows to talk about. Not because the shows are hard to rank. Actually, I guess that is kind of it. These shows are hard to rank at this point because they are kind of in line with one another. They're just as good as one another. So when I say I'm kicking off a show, understand that I kind of do it with a heavy heart. I don't want to kick off a show, but if it saves me time each week, I'll kick off a show. And it'll be the least entertaining show of the week, but it won't be a bad show. Most of the time. We'll see how this week is. We still got to go through our top 3, which, starting in 3rd place, we have Dorohedoro. And again, I love just the world building of this show. It's big brains that was needed, because I'm not going to say it was insanity. I'm not saying it's insanity anymore. I used to say that it's not. It's big brains. Or at least for this episode, it was totally big brains. The way they build this world is ingenious. And I'm loving every second of it. The only problems I'm having with this show is the way it is doing the animation. The action scenes are just coming across great and fun and everything, but the way that they move and walk in slower scenes and even the way they talk seems like a step back in animation quality. At least recently. Like the first episode, yeah, it was kind of janky. But we were able to get around it by just knowing this is a new animation style. 7 episodes in and I'm just having a hard time getting through it. It is kind of taking effort for me to get through those animation scenes. The rest of it is making it worth it, but every time I see them just kind of sitting around, joking around, not doing too complicated of movements or camera action, is looking really stiff and really rough. I can't animate that good. I haven't even tried it. So I'm giving them props for doing something that not everybody else is doing. They are doing a much better job than Berserk's 2016. They are blowing that out of the water. I'm just saying we're not at that point yet with their animation. Give it a couple of years. It is getting there. I'm loving it. Moving on. In second place, we have Rikka. And now, Rikka, how to put it? It's stupid, it's smart, and it's funny, and that's all I really ask for. I'm a simple man. I have simple requirements for a good show, and this show is ticking off. I think it would probably be a better manga to read, or maybe light novel, I don't know. But for right now, this show is still funny enough to keep me coming back each week. So, again, I'm feeling like I don't have anything to say on it because there's nothing good nor bad about it to say. Everything it's trying to do, it's doing right. And that's the important thing. It's funny, it's quick-witted, but it gives the jokes time to resonate with people. Everything it's doing is just right. It's not trying to blow you out of the water, and it's not trying to, talk down to you either. It is a very relatable romantic comedy about people who are really, really smart but do really, really dumb things. It is doing its job right. I'm giving it full remarks. It 100% doing its job right. With really nothing much left to say, let's just move on to our first place show. Spoiler alert, it's It Invaded. When you got a show that gets me to understand almost all of it on a subtextual level, you got a really, really good, solid show. And the characters do say a lot of things, but it's a lot more techno mumbo jumbo. But the plot is being moved along by action, and that's the important thing. For the most part. Again, that one scene where the guy is arrested for basically reasons that aren't truly brought up in the show, or at least explain why they were searching in on him specifically, especially if it's violating, privacy rules and all that kind of stuff. Again, that's my one problem with this show. Everything else is running good. I don't know how else to say it. Watch this show. It's doing a good job with its visual motifs, its character motifs, its running themes. I guess that's technically a motif still in and of itself. I don't know what I'm talking about. My head is killing me right now. But this show is doing a good job. It is killing it. I haven't watched too many other shows other than what I've shown you so far. I haven't watched any sequels to anything. I haven't watched anything else. I still haven't even watched interspecies reviewers. But everything else this season, the number one thing I can recommend to everybody, including my mother, because I know she likes Criminal Minds. This is anime Criminal Minds. I can recommend this show to pretty much anybody who is willing to get behind, yeah, it's animated, but technically so was half of Inception, if you really think about it. Yeah, they used a lot of practical effects. A lot of it was CGI. It's animated. But that's just our top 3. What about the bottom 3? Picking a bottom 3 was hard to place them, but easy to pick, for the most part. Because, they were the shows that I had the hardest time saying good things about. And with that in mind, just know that some of them are kind of interchangeable, including the one that's in 4th place that I'm not going to talk about, but if you can do the math, you can figure out which show is left behind. But starting in 3rd place, again, this 4th, 5th, and 6th place can be interchangeable, pretty much. But putting it in there, because I had to pick one, in 4th place is Inspector. And again, it's because, for the most part, it's been a very interesting story. The way they build its environment is cool, is interesting. Sitting around and talking about it is not how you really get that done. Especially in an animated series. I don't know how many times I have to say this to people. That is not interesting in a visual, animated medium. The rest of the show is good. It's just when you got 15 minutes of meh and then 5 minutes of, oh, okay, that was interesting, it's not a good show. So that's why it's a little bit lower on this list. The rest of the episodes so far have been really, really good and really, really worth it. So I'm not, kicking it off that easily. But like I said earlier, this show is hard for me to watch when it's just sitting around talking. It hurts. And I got a headache. So let's stop making my head hurt worse. Let's move on. In 6th place is Somali. I feel as though I put it on there in its placement because I had nothing good to say about it, but nothing really mean to say about it other than I just really didn't get anything out of this episode. When you got a show that basically something happens in this episode. I can't say that nothing happened in this episode, but when it doesn't resonate and where I feel like I didn't get anything out of it, I don't have anything good to say about this show. Again, the rest of the episodes have been great, been good, near the top of my list. And then here it is, near the bottom of it, a little bit earlier than I expected it to be. And it kind of hurts to see it like that, but I can't say anything good about it if it's not doing anything for me. Maybe it's doing something more for you. Tell me about it. Put something down in my comments below. I want to hear from you guys. Is this worth it? Because really easy picks for next week, but for right now, there's nothing good. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. But, moving onwards, we got our final place show. And I'm kicking myself because I was so loving it, but I can't say anything good about it anymore. Pet, what the fuck? Like, straight up, you had such a powerful start. You were my 2nd place show this season. From the start. And now, I don't want to know what happens in the end because you made me not care. Like, yeah, the first couple episodes, I didn't care where it was going, but that's because I was just along for the ride. I was enjoying it. Now I can't stand it, and I do not want to know where it ends because who cares? When you had such a strong plot concept as these psychics going in, messing with people's minds, and the creative world building that can involve, but you just kind of mumble your way through it instead of building on it, and these characters are starting to feel, I don't know, they feel uninteresting in the worst way possible to describe it. I hate doing that. But right now I can't. I just can't do it. No. No more. You have upsetted me for the last time, Pet. It's time to say your prayers. But with that, brings us down to the end of another week of the Anime Battle Royale. What's in store for us next week? Will Somali be able to pull it out? Will Inspector finally shut up and start doing something interesting? Who knows? I can't tell you anything. I'm just in too much mental agony right now to keep going on for much longer. So with that being said, my name's Yoshino. It's been great having you here. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you need to do to let me know that you liked it, hate it. Just watch as much of it as possible so you can get to this point, maybe. Be sure to follow me on Twitch because I may be switching to there in the near future to do these kind of reviews. Follow me on Twitter. I'm trying to figure out what to talk about on there, but I got nothing to say at the moment, so I'll say something when I have something important to say, unlike these videos. But with that, again, thank you for being here. My name's Yoshino, and I'll see you all next time. See ya!